Okay, so for some of you, I think you know who I am, but for some of you might not. My name is Terry Van Vallis. I'm with the Office of Academic Support. I conduct a lot of these webinars, but I'm also responsible for a lot of the programs that support basically your academic efforts. So for instance, the Peer Tutor program is one of those programs that I oversee. So today, how I like to progress through the presentation, it is going to be somewhat interactive. You will not be using the mic, you'll just be using the chat area to communicate with me. There is going to be some polling, so I'm going to ask you to respond to a couple of the questions. If you have a question that you don't think you can wait until the end, ask it. I don't want you to wait to the end and then forget about it. But most likely, I'm hoping I'm going to answer most of the questions when it comes to study skills. It should be about an hour long. I'm hoping to have the presentation done early, so we do have time to answer some of the questions that you do have. It will be recorded, so you will receive the recording probably Friday, so you can go back and refer to some of the questions and some of the information that we covered here today. You will also receive the PowerPoint presentation, so there's no need to write anything down. Okay? I should also note, if you do have a question or a comment, just raise your hand. That just alerts me, and sometimes I'm not looking at the chat area. I might miss your question. If you raise your hand, I get a beep in my ear, and then I know that somebody has an inquiry. All right, so that would be great. Now I just want to make sure we have Asha. Is it Asha? Asha just joined. If you can hear, if you could select the green check mark to indicate that you can, that would be great, and then we can proceed along. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, so today we are covering what is meant by study skills. Okay, and of course a lot of people have different opinions of what study skills are. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about what the learning environment is, and of course there's a learning environment that you're forced in, and then of course there's an ideal learning environment as well. Ways to study, some common, study skill areas that we'll look at, and, some case studies. Actually, I don't remember doing case studies, but I think we do have a case study in here. And then some questions. And, I'm not going to be able to cover everything. Let me see here. I don't think there is a case study, so my apologies. I don't know how we got a case study in here, so you're going to have to ignore that. Unless, of course, I come across that and I'm not aware of it. This is not to cover every aspect of study skills. It really is to just give you an overview to increase your awareness of what this means, and hopefully, you can obtain a little knowledge, maybe change a couple things. And then, of course, I'll give you some links, too, where you can find more information about this. So what is really meant by study skills? I don't mean to read the slide, but basically the common response typically is the way you study in the environment you study in. It is and it isn't, okay? And I think you'll understand as I go forward. What is really meant, truly, is that there's lots of elements to study skills, and I've listed quite a few. And the ones that really come, to play, at least most of the time for me, when I talk to some students, is really time management, the reading, the writing skills, the anxiety, not necessarily the listening, but maybe the note-taking skills, especially when you're reading a textbook. And of course, you're not expected to be an expert in any of these areas, by the way, these topics, okay? So you just want to be comfortable and understand different areas of studies, and maybe concentrate on specific areas that you might be having some difficulty with. So for instance, time management. Time management's a big one that a lot of students do struggle. We're adult learners, you're at Empire State College, so the typical, average age is 35, which means you are definitely getting hit with lots of commitments outside of, if you're working and outside your family, so it is a time management issue. So I do a time management webinar as well that covers, some strategies. So why don't we do a poll, okay, because I think this is important, and you'll understand why it is. So if you just give me a minute, I'm going to put the polling up, and you're going to notice that the green check mark, okay, and the X are going to change to letters. So if you could please just select the letter that applies to the first poll, which is where do you study, okay? So you've got A for kitchen, B for library, C for bedroom, D anywhere you can, and then E other, okay? Might be some other place that you find much better. So far, okay, we've got D anywhere you can, so 50-50, and then we got E for other, okay. So it looks like really the majority, and I don't know if Nelson, I think Nelson can still not hear. The majority of you study anywhere you can. Okay, all right. So let's clear this, and then what I'm going to want you to do is to answer the second poll, which is when do you study? Okay, so A for morning, B for afternoon, C for evening, D late at night, E any open time. I am not surprised by these answers by no means, by the way. Okay, I don't even have to put the poll up, but I'm going to anyways. The majority of you at any open time. And my guess is because you have other commitments that are taking up your time and you're forced to basically, right, study any time you can, any open time. Okay. So I guess the reason why I asked you, okay, these questions is because it does start to, you know, hopefully you're thinking, geez, you know, maybe I should be studying at some other time. And so what is the, I guess, the benefit of knowing, and why could this possibly be not, for instance, the best place to study, and when to study? So that's just something just to consider for the next slide. So, ideal. Just out of curiosity, you know, in the chat area, when is your ideal time? When do you think you would be best, okay, studying? Okay, actually we did an environment, pardon me. Let me ask it differently. So hold that question, Xavier. Your ideal learning environment, what would it be? Just out of curiosity. Look, don't even look at the slide, but what would it be? What's the ideal learning environment? Because sometimes if you're studying in the kitchen, it could be possibly because, you know, you're trying to cook dinner, and the only time you can do this right now is having the laptop on the counter like I was doing the other night, have my laptop while I'm cooking dinner and carrying that conversation with my daughter about her homework. That is obviously not the ideal learning environment for me. Mom cave. I like that. We've got the man cave. There definitely should be a mom cave. Roomy, quiet, classical music in the background. I like that too, yes. Quiet, okay. Good. So you all have an ideal learning environment, correct? And not everybody likes a quiet room. Like for me, you know, depending on, you know, what I am trying to accomplish, I might need quiet, and on the other hand, it doesn't make a difference. And it also depends, I'm wondering for you all, does it depend on your mood and what happened during the day? You know, if you had a really, really, really busy day at work, you know, coming home, typically you like a lot of noise when you learn, but you've had already so much noise during the day that you really want it quiet. And so being aware, okay, of some of those things make a huge impact on how you learn and what you absorb when you do finally settle down to learn. Right, exactly. It depends on what you're working on. Absolutely. If something actually requires your full attention, you definitely don't want any distractions. So, you know, if we look at some of these bullet points here, obviously quiet. A lot of you mentioned quiet. And of course, you know, interruptions, free from distractions, you know, is ideal, by the way. And the reason being is you know, you get into that flow, you have an idea, and it gets, you know, disrupted. Now you have to try to pick up where you were. And if we go through this even in time management, that actually is a time waster, okay, when you're distracted by certain things. So, you know, for instance, you know, distractions can be lots of things, by the way. I can have my children in the room while I'm doing that. To me, that's not distracting. But distracting could be I'm checking my email, I'm checking Facebook, I'm watching TV, I'm doing this, I'm doing multiple things instead of focusing on my course and my coursework. So, you know, those are some of the things to think about, is what are those distractors, okay, for you. And of course, you know, obviously a place like a mom cave where you can concentrate is you know, important. So, you know, if, for instance, a TV is distracting to you, you probably don't want to sit there and you know, open up your stats book, for instance, and start reading when you know that that's going to be distracting and you've already got a very difficult subject to begin with, okay? So the other distracting or place to concentrate, by the way, believe it or not, especially for moms, and maybe not, and I don't mean to, you know, stereotype, but, you know, when I walk into my house and things are not, like for instance, if the dishes are still in the sink, say for instance, or if the living room is still, you know, crowded with stuff from my kids, I can't concentrate, by the way, because all I'm thinking of, I got to do the dishes, I got to pick up, I got to do this, and so, you know, I think you get my point when it comes to concentration. Make sure that your mind is as free as possible and place yourself in an environment that allows you to do that. Of course, being comfortable, okay, that means a lot of things to a lot of people. So, you know, you can figure that out. Some people like some light, some people like a lot of light, you know. What makes you comfortable, okay, is what's ideal. Of course, when you look at textbook, okay, you know, you want comfortable but ideal, okay, with good lighting and no distractions and so on and so forth. And I think everybody's a little bit different when it comes to that. And of course, they tell you to avoid caffeine. I really don't get that, but I do understand that. But to try to hydrate yourself, obviously, and pick wise snacks, okay, that are not going to give you that sugar high. And I think that's the same thing with the caffeine, because once you start with the caffeine, you know, it helps for a little bit, but then you come down, they got to drink more caffeine. So I guess that's what they're talking about here. Ideal time, all right? So let's ask everybody now, what is your ideal learning time? We know that you do it anytime you can, but what is the best time for you? So go right ahead and just select a, you know, A, early to mid-morning, early to late afternoon, evening, other, or you don't know. Okay, great. Okay, so let's look at these. So the majority of you are saying early to late afternoon, okay? And then it looks like we've got a tie for, actually there's no tie, I think, yes, because Nelson didn't, or I didn't, they're saying. Actually the second would be early to mid-morning, and then D would be other. Okay, all right. So there is no right or wrong as far as I'm concerned here, as long as you know when your peak time is. And if possible, okay, I know a lot of you mentioned that you learn, you take whatever time you can, but you know, if there's a day, even over the weekend, that you can learn during those ideal learning times for you, you should try to do that, okay? If you cannot do that, at a minimum, try to make sure that your environment is somewhat ideal for you. Okay, like for instance, for me, my time is early to mid-afternoon. Matter of fact, the earlier the better. When it gets past like 10, 11 o'clock, actually 10 o'clock, forget it. You know, now of course I'm working during that time, so that leaves me for the evening. And so I find myself doing a lot of the work in the evening. I am not as sharp, okay, in the evening. I'm pretty spent, okay, and it does impact my learning. Okay, so I try to do, you know, when I can before I even get to work, which I get to work about 7 o'clock, I try to do some work before then, all right? So, okay, so all day since you don't work. Okay, perfect. So then you can pick your perfect time. Okay, so, and I guess the last point I want to make is that, you know, if you can, you know, determine what your ideal time is, and you can take advantage of that, just make sure that it counts when you do that. Alrighty. Oh, the other thing too is, let me go back to this. And this comes back to time management too, by the way, this learning time. You know, make sure that if you are going to set out to learn, okay, you're going to study, that you try to do it consistently if at all possible. And if it's not consistent because based on your schedule, you know, that you only can get some time Monday during this time, but it's different on Wednesday and it's different on Friday, that's okay as long as you do it consistently, and that you, in fact, when you do have that time, that you are doing the studying, that you are doing your work, okay? It becomes a habit. So I just wanted to make that point. Okay, so what are the most common ways to study? All right. So the most common response actually is interesting, and I think we can kind of debunk this because I think this is a traditional way of studying, is reading the textbook and highlighting the information. Although a lot of people do still use this particular technique, do you think it works for everyone? So let me just change the polling, okay, to a yes or no answer. Okay, so green for yes, the check mark, and X for no. Okay, so why don't you think this works? Okay, for those that said they don't think this works for everyone, just type in why you don't think it works. Okay, good, Xavier. I don't like defacing my book. Yep. Yep, and Wendy says it depends on you learn. I don't learn that way. Yep, everyone has different learning styles. Okay, so for the two that said that yes, this works for everyone, I want to know what your opinion is. So Heather says sometimes I absorb better than with a visual. Okay. So Asha, and I'm sorry, at CMCE, if you guys could just give us your perspective why you think it does work for everyone. So I'm just going to wait. Oh, okay, so it works for you. Okay, all right. So do you think it works for everyone then? So I would assume you probably don't think it works for everyone. You think it just works for you. Brings important points up front. Okay, great, thank you. All right, so CMCE brings important points up front. Okay, so my guess is it probably works well for you. But believe it or not, it does not, okay, work for everyone. And again, it comes back to your own learning style and how you learn. If you are a visual person, if you are a hands-on person, if you are an audio, you know, different learning styles, this might actually make it worse, okay? Now, of course, you don't have to deface the book. You know, highlighting can also mean you know, using post-it notes. Okay, so here I'm just going to highlight a couple other ways to study. So, you know, instead of using a highlighter, okay, what if you used, you know, for instance, note cards, okay? And I'm really just encouraging everyone to maybe try one or two of these if, in fact, the way you're going about it now is not working, okay? Because you might find going, whew, okay, that might work for me. The other thing too is if you don't know your learning style, you really should try to find out what that is. And I don't think I have that link here today, which means I will make sure I send that out to you when I send out the recording. But understanding if you are really a visual, there are some strategies you can use. For instance, you know, note cards. You might need a visual, you know, to write those down and flip through. So you're seeing it, so you're taking information from the book, you're putting it on a note card, and you're flipping through it. So that's a visual for you. The other thing too is audio or audio, okay, or even hands-on to a certain degree, like for instance copying notes, although that's a text visual person, but reading out loud. If you're a hands-on person, believe it or not, some people reading out loud, okay, and walking around is a movement, okay, which is kind of almost a hands-on, so they have to move while they learn. And on oral, they're reading it out loud because they're listening to it, and so they're absorbing it that way. All right, so those, in like case studies, for instance, those are examples or demonstrations, okay, how it can be related back to something in the textbook. So these are, like I said, these are just suggestions, different ways. If you haven't tried these, try it. Matter of fact, I wonder how many, oh, thank you, Wendy. I appreciate that. So Wendy has put up the link for the learning, and I think, is that the Van Ark one? I think I have that name right. Wendy, is that it? Wendy, by the way, if I think this is this Wendy Scott? I think it is. If that's Wendy, Wendy is actually, okay, Wendy is one of our academic coaches, okay, who work with students that are new to the college or students that are at risk. And so Wendy helps out with, you know, ways to study, helps out with the learning styles. Okay, so she's a great resource. She's your tutor. Great, Mary. I'm glad you're here. Thank you. How many of you actually discuss topics with others? Just out of curiosity, just raise your hand, or a green check mark would be fine. Okay, keep going. Great. So do you find that useful? Because when you find yourself, what, kind of, you know, describing it or discussing it, is it reinforcing it back for you? Yes or no? Yeah? So green check mark for yes? Exactly. So that is a great way to learn, by the way, is to share, okay, what you've learned. And matter of fact, you know, when you're discussing it, I'll bet you probably, after you're discussing it, go, I guess I don't know that part of it. I should go back and I should reread, or I should, increase my depth of knowledge about that area. I bet you that happens as well. So that is a great, great way, I think, to study. And also even showing, and depending on, even showing somebody a concept, if it's a flow chart or you're writing it down, is another way of reinforcing it to you, but it's another way to study. Okay, so we've talked about, if you recall that last slide, or the couple slides back, we talked a little bit about what is meant by study skills, and we mentioned time management. I am only going to cover a couple things on the time management, okay? The only reason why I chose this is because it is a huge challenge for a lot of the students. So I guess what I want to say here is there is a variety of tools out there, okay, that can assess, I should say, the amount of hours that you have in a day, in a week, and so on and so forth, and it does this whole rating thing, blah, blah, blah. That might work for you, okay? That's great if it does. If not, and I think that can take up some time. There's other ways that you can manage your time, and it could just be as simple as, a weekly calendar, a listing, assignment calculator, they said, and actually I don't have that link either. Bad me. I'll have to send that one to you as well. That one I think was University of Maryland. Thanks, Wendy. It was on that last slide, Wendy, for time management, so if you had that, we can bring it up. But that is kind of a cool tool where you can type in that this is the day I'm starting the project, this is the day the project is due, and it gives you kind of really a to-do list. And personally, don't follow it, step by step, but at least gives you kind of a guide of where you should start and where you should end, okay, until maybe you kind of get used to getting back in. If you're new to the college and you've been out of school for a while, this might be a great way to go about trying to manage and organize your coursework. The bottom line here, though, is that whatever you do, okay, when it comes to time management, is you got to do it consistently, okay, and we'll talk a little bit about that. I'm just waiting for Wendy. I think she'll get it. When she gets it, we'll bring it back up again, okay? So just out of curiosity, how do you guys manage your time now? Yeah, Wendy, I thought it was University of Maryland. It was on the time management slide presentation. If not, don't worry about it. What I'll do is I will definitely send it to everybody and they can play around with it. So does everybody use some type of a calendar? Just out of curiosity, do you use your smartphone? Do you use the computer? Do you handwrite, a to-do list? Do you have a whiteboard? So are you, I guess in general, you're using something to manage your time? Good. So you're using a calendar. Good. I use a how to get things done. Good. I use my Outlook calendar. Wonderful. Okay, good. So you're using some tools. Do you look and review those on a consistent basis? Because that's another thing about time management is that you have to do it consistently. And the reason being is that you can then foresee if in fact there's going to be a problem, okay? So if you know you've got this birthday party coming up, or you know that you're going to have to do this presentation, or if you're traveling, or if your children have some type of a tournament, you know you're going to be out, but a big project is due, looking ahead, you'll know that, oh, I better start this project early. Oh, great. So you have phone and you set aside time. Wonderful. Good. Good, good, good. Glad to hear it. Okay. So here are just some principles I guess we can talk a little bit about, and it's interesting here because this is almost counterintuitive. Study difficult subjects first, and a lot of students go, what? Seriously? Do that first? Reason being, and I get the idea here is that difficult subjects tend to give us the greatest anxiety, right, and the stress. And we all do this, by the way, we're human. We want to just keep pushing that aside. So we procrastinate and procrastinate and procrastinate until it comes down to the point where we actually have to, okay, Wendy, great, we'll look at that in a minute. And so when it's time to come to that subject, we're tired, we're not fresh, and it becomes more difficult than what it really is. So the premise really is that when you start a difficult subject first, you're fresh, you can process the information much quicker, and believe it or not, it saves you more time. And the other point I'm going to make about that is that with a difficult subject, if you get a little done at a time and you always start it first, it reduces your anxiety and stress, believe it or not, because you accomplished something. And it allows you also to foresee if you're going to have more difficulty than you had expected, okay? Or you might be surprised going, well, geez, this is not that bad, all right? So try doing that. So if you're one that keeps those difficult subjects and you wait to the last minute, try reversing that, all right, and see if that helps a little bit, all right? So use distributed learning in practice. Well, what does that mean? Okay, well, what that means is study in shorter time blocks, okay, with short breaks in between. All right, and the reason being, again, is it keeps you from getting tired and wasting time. Now, I will tell you, I have very difficult time doing this because once and I'm sure most of you probably are in the same boat, once you get going, you definitely don't want to stop. And, you know, for instance, I'm in grad studies, and I use this example all the time, so my apologies if you've heard this. You know, I was up last night till like 11 o'clock, and I was on that computer for 3 hours. And I was doing 3 different things, and I wouldn't give up. I finally, at 11 o'clock, had to say, okay, I can't do this any further, okay? So, and I didn't take any breaks. And so, granted, yes, I'm telling you to do this, and I don't necessarily practice it all the time. Know when you need to take the time, though. I do at times know, well, okay, I just can't do this anymore. I need to go take a break. But when you do take that break, okay, make sure that you return, okay, back to what you were trying to do. And maybe what you say is, okay, I'm only going to work on this for, you know, a half hour. I'm going to walk away, and it's only going to be 5 minutes, refresh, walk around the house. Don't do anything in the house, though, because then you're going to get sidetracked. And return and maybe do another half hour and then be done with it, okay? I just have a hard time setting restraints sometimes for myself, of which I'm sure you all can empathize with that. Okay, so make sure you have time to sleep and eat. And we talk a little bit about, you know, sleep as being, believe it or not, a time trap. If you don't have enough sleep, believe it or not, you're not obviously as productive as you should be, and you won't absorb the information that you need to learn. And so at least at a minimum, they tell you at least 6 hours or more. Try to do that if you possibly can, all right? It does make a huge difference. And of course, obviously, if you're eating properly, or at least eating or having something in your system, you know, it's not tiring you out, all right? So I won't go on about that because I think we all understand the importance of both. And then, of course, combine activities. Okay, this is not multitasking. Okay, I want to make sure that we're clear on this. Okay, because multitasking, believe it or not, is a time trap. So what I mean by combining activities is you all mentioned that you learn whenever you can, whenever the time is available. And so my guess is that if you're sitting at, you know, like me for instance, I'm sitting at basketball practice 3 times a week, and then I'm going to swim, you know, 4 times a week. So there's 7 days in my life that I'm sitting somewhere. I'm bringing my laptop, okay, I'm bringing my books, you know, I'm taking the time to do that. Or if I'm sitting in the doctor's office, you know, I've got at least a half hour I know I'm going to be sitting there. What can I do? I might be looking at my calendar to see what's coming up. Or I might be making notes or to-do list. So try to see if you can combine. That's what I mean by combining activities, okay? If you're doing laundry, well, while you're doing laundry, can you do that? Same thing if you're in the kitchen and you do have a laptop. Can you check your posts in the discussion areas, okay? Look at those. Maybe not necessarily respond to them, but at least you're reading them. You're thinking about it, you're reflecting, and maybe you can respond to them later, which will save you a little time. That's what I mean by combining activities. Okay? Yes, Wendy mentions, you know, record reading your text and playing it in your commute. Exactly, which is a great idea. Some textbooks will be on tape that you can just pop in, okay? Otherwise, if they're not, if you have the time to record those, I think that's a great idea. Save some time. And again, only if, in fact, that is a good way for you to learn. I know for me, I can't do that. I get way too distracted. Next thing I know, I'm zoning and I'm not even hearing anything on the recording, which is not a good thing. Okay, so the other element that we talked about, and like I mentioned, I wasn't going to cover them all, but I picked up concentration and time management were the 2. I don't think I cover them all. You know, concentration can be difficult, okay? You know, especially when you have a lot of things on your mind. And we're not going to go through this self-quiz. It will be on the PowerPoint, but you might want to take this when you receive that, just out of curiosity, to see what the internal distractors are if, in fact, you don't know. Because we talked a little bit about that. So, and I apologize, this is a really bad slide, and I will redo this one. So let me see if I can kind of highlight a couple of these. So, you know, ways to improve your concentration. You know, set study goals before you begin, you know, and I mentioned this earlier, like I will go 3 hours and just keep plowing through it. Probably not the best way, quite honestly, even though I might have set the goal for 3 hours. But you might want to set the goal, like I'm going to read chapters, you know, 1 and 2, and I'm going to read it between now, you know, time from X to, you know, to Z, or I'm going to read it on Monday, I'm going to read chapter 1 on Monday, and I'm going to read chapter 2 on Wednesday, whatever it might be, but set some goals. And also switch it up, you know, divide the study periods, okay, between subjects. So again, we talked about difficult subjects versus easy subjects. You know, maybe you've been doing the easier ones, now switch it up and start doing the difficult ones and see if that makes a difference. This is the other thing. I'm sorry, I'm a big proponent of this one for sure. Always have a notebook handy. And if you don't, if you've got, you know, a phone and you have text, you know, use that. I think a notebook pad is better, but you're always thinking. I don't know about you, but when you're in school, you know, you're constantly thinking, you're reading, lots of thoughts are going through your mind, you're reflecting about those readings, you're reflecting about how they connect with your life, how they connect with, you know, maybe your prior knowledge, how they connect to, you know, something, you know, else in your life, how they connect to, you know, your friend, whatever it might be. Your brain is constantly thinking. Even when you're in bed, you know, when you go to sleep, it's thinking, you're waking up, you have some thoughts. Write them down, because a lot of that information can be transferred to your written assignment, to a post, you know. For instance, again, I'm going to bring back to my grad studies, the course I'm taking. You know, they want us to tell stories, and the information that we are learning about is how does that make a connection to your current life? Can you actually make the connection? And if you can't, then that's fine. It might make a connection in the future. All right? So I'm constantly jotting notes down when I'm reading, or if I'm just thinking about something, I'm writing always, 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 always. So it's good information that you can pull in, as I guess is my point. You know, this point about keeping score of your concentration, you can do that. It's something that, how can I refer it to? Each time you break your concentration, you're putting, you know, a check mark or a hash mark down, and then you count those. You can do that. What ends up happening is it really increases the awareness of how often your concentration is being broken. And over time, it's supposed to train you, okay, to resist, okay, wandering. It might work, it might not. I don't know. The other thing too is study with a pencil in your hand. The distractions we talked about, just remove those distractions, like the phone, the internet, you know, whatever it might be. We talked about start with short study periods. We talked about take a break. You know, make the most of the rest periods, do something different. And when I mentioned earlier, when you do those rest periods, and actually rest periods are something totally different than taking a break. When you take a break, make sure you just return, that's all. The rest periods, what they mean there is making sure that they count. So, you know, if you're tired and you really need a night off, make sure you're doing something that is going to rejuvenate you, and that really does make a difference, if at all possible. You know, I know that that can be difficult, and it's easy for me to say that, but see if you can do that. You know, and by the way, you should recognize that you might need that rest period, by the way. But knowing that if you do take that rest period and you're not studying that night, you're not doing anything, that you might have to do a little extra, okay, on the nights that you are. But try to recognize that, okay? And then the last one I want to cover is reading comprehension, because this truly can be a big block for a lot of students. And And a lot of students believe that they have to, if the assignment is to read chapters 1 through 3, they're going to read chapters 1 through 3. When in fact, you don't necessarily have to read from cover to cover or from chapter to chapter. All right? And so what I suggest before anybody starts reading is that what do you know about the subject way before you started reading? Okay, just jot down some of those areas, or at least in your mind you know. And the other thing too is before you read, why you're reading. You know, make sure you understand what the assignment is first of all. You know, don't start reading just because that's part of the assignment. Are you supposed to use that information out of the textbook to write something for the assignment, or is it really to maybe have a discussion in the discussion area? So make sure you understand why you're reading. Okay. So it mentions here about brainstorming, group discussion, you know, concept or mind mapping. You could do that, okay? However you want, okay, to activate the knowledge that you have already about the topic, you know, go for it. Now I mentioned this too a little bit, you know, while you read, you know, do short bursts, okay? Again, you know, depending on the topic, you might be able to read the book, you know, within an hour, so you don't have to take a break if it's a really easy read. You know, some of the history courses we have here, some of the reads are about someone's story, you know, and it's a real life, you know, story, and you don't want to put the book down because you're very much engaged. That's okay. But, you know, when you're reading something that's a little bit difficult, like for instance human nutrition, you know, they talk about the digestive system. Well, to read that for about an hour, you know, some people really need to take a break. They might need to take a break, you know, well before the 35 minutes because they need to absorb some of the terminology and some of the information that's covered because it's pretty heavy, okay? And if you don't have a prior knowledge of this, then it is a little bit more difficult for you. And so you need a little time and you might have to go back and reread it again. So this depends. I think this is subjective. It really depends on, again, the topic. Monitor your comprehension. This is huge, okay? So if you're reading and maybe you're really not noticing you're wandering, okay, because we've read, how many times have you, raise your hand, how many times have you read and you have no clue what you just read? Right? So what do you think happened? You all started wandering, right? You just zoned out, and even though most of the time. So you're reading, I mean, you are really reading, but you're like, it's really just not. So one or two things are happening here. Maybe you really should just go take a break, right? Or maybe, you know, maybe this subject is not the subject you study for tonight. You should do something else. But always ask yourself, what have I learned? And if in fact you realize that you haven't learned anything because you haven't been paying attention, okay, try to come up with a different strategy, okay, to get yourself concentrated on reading. So for instance, okay, look at your environment. Again, I'm going to bring it back to the beginning. Look at your environment. Is the environment distracting? If it's distracting, that might be the reason why you're not comprehending what you're reading, okay? Or I should say, you know, what about the time? Is it really late in the evening? You know, are you sitting down right at 10 o'clock at night and you're trying to read? You might be exhausted at that point. And so maybe the best thing to do at that point is maybe just skim through the book at that point, okay? Yes, Nelson. Just skim through the book and get an idea what you might be reading, which by the way is a strategy anyways, and then maybe save that for the next day. Have maybe a list of questions you want answered while you read. You know, always have that assignment next to you if you actually have to apply what you've learned in the readings to an assignment. So those are just some strategies, okay? But always check to see if you are really, you know, comprehending what you're reading. And of course, you know, you do this when you write an assignment. You're always going to phrase something in your own words, okay? And the reason why you do that is because you don't want to plagiarize, right? And the other reason why you do that is because that really does determine if you do understand what you're comprehending. And so if you're having a hard time with some kind of passage in a book, you know, maybe write it down to see if you really do understand it. Can you actually, you know, transfer what you just read to paper? And if you find you're having a really difficult time, you know, maybe there's aspects of it you go back and you read. Okay, so that's another strategy. And of course, I actually like this one, okay, is read aloud. Sometimes when it's really difficult, you know, reading it to yourself in quiet, and of course, you know, you obviously can't read it aloud if you're somewhere where there's people or you're in a doctor's office or whatever, but if you can read it out loud, sometimes it makes a lot more sense. Okay, and it also highlights the areas that you need to further investigate. All right, so try that strategy. And then, of course, lastly, after you read, summarize, and review the reading, you can use this form. There's a form, and again, it'll be on the PowerPoint, but it gives you some tips of how to basically summarize, okay, the readings. All right, it's an outline. And of course, lastly, is organize notes by connecting ideas and concept maps. This comes back to if you can make a connection to what you are reading to something similar in your life, okay, or something that you've experienced, or something that you've seen, or something that someone has shared with you, you're more apt to remember, okay, of what you've read. So let me give you an example. I just watched a video on do schools kill creativity? Okay, and obviously there's lots of arguments about yes they do and no they don't. Okay, and as I'm listening to that video and the speaker, I should say, I can immediately make connections to what this person is saying by stories, by examples, and so I jot those things down, because now I'm going to remember this particular speaker, okay, and what he spoke about, because I have examples of my knowledge, of my experience. So if you can do that, try to do that, okay? And the other thing too, by the way, if you can do that, why not share that? Sometimes, depending on the written assignments, you can actually share that. All right, so before I go through any of this, do we have any questions? I know I covered a lot. But does this make sense? Do you think that you can incorporate some of the things we covered in here today? Okay, good. So any questions? Comments? So out of curiosity, how many students are new to the college? This is your first term. Okay, so we have 2 so far. Okay. Well, welcome. I'm glad you could join. Second term for Sarah. Welcome. Good. So Xavier, explain that. Okay, so Marianne, you're returning. Well, welcome back. I'm glad you returned. Going back to college, especially in adult hood, is difficult. It is definitely very challenging, but it's definitely doable, okay? I want you all to know that. I am a former Empire State College student. I got an associate's and a bachelor's, going on for a master's. And it is definitely a challenge, but it is worth it when you get through it. So just remember that. Keep telling yourself that. And keep looking, by the way, at what your goals and what you're trying to accomplish. Yes, and Wendy makes a point is don't be afraid to reach out. So me being an academic support, I am the person that you would reach out to. And if I can't find you what you need, then I will refer you to the proper place. And of course, we're going to go through some resources here in a moment. So I just want to make sure I answer any questions before I do that. I'm actually going to try this link. Okay, so Xavier says, so I'm reading the Leviathan, which has hard to understand language since it's, hold on a second here, it's hundreds of years old. I don't take time to understand everything and instead try to detect the overall theme. Yeah, that's difficult, and I understand that, because some even the history classes, they use some textbooks where the language is very difficult to understand, and even some of the vocabulary that they use is not, the standard vocabulary that we use in today's world. And so, the only suggestion I can make for you, especially if it is a vocabulary and the overall theme, that's a very good idea, is the overall theme. And hopefully you've got the overall theme, the whole idea of the whole passage. Maybe having, a dictionary or something that can help you. But yeah, that can take some time, so good for you. Okay. So I'm going to try the link that Wendy gave us, and let's just see if this is the right link. Okay, it is. Well, no, it's a different one. Oh, this link. Oh, okay. This is what you did. All right. I'm going to give you a different link. I know which one you did, Wendy. Nope, that's all right. No, no, no. This is a different link. This is another link that that other students use that they can use. This one will sit here and calculate, okay, you know how many hours you're sleeping in a day, in a night, I should say. I can't get this up here. Hold on a second here. So this is a different type of a calculator, and I don't know why I can't go over to the far right. My apologies here. You know, how many hours a day do you spend eating, how much time do you spend commuting, so on and so forth. And so then this will give you kind of an idea of how many hours you have available to spend on your studies. The one that I was talking about, and Wendy, it's fine, the one I was talking about is the one that actually gives you a step-by-step, you know, when you should start, you know, researching and information like that. You have that one too? Okay. Yeah, because there was two of them, Wendy. There was a calculator, and then there was a one that estimated when you should have everything done. Okay. So let's talk about some resources, okay, that can help with some of your study skills, but also can okay, there it is, University of Maryland. I just want to show everybody this one because I really think this is kind of a cool tool. There we go. Let me push this one out. Let me just bring this one up. Oh, come on. Let me try this one again. Doesn't like it. There we go. So let's just say you have an assignment that was given to you today, and it is due 2 weeks from now, okay? Or on the 27th. Let's put that. Oops. And what it does is it calculates, it gives you kind of an idea. And again, like I said, this is just a guideline. But if you're struggling with when to start and what to do, it will tell you, obviously on a daily basis, you don't have to do that, you can combine some things, but, you know, understand your assignment. Look at, you know, for instance, you know, what type of format that you need to use for citation, okay, if you're not sure. You know, so it's really collecting information, and then it goes through starting the writing process, so on and so forth. And as you can see, it tells you what you need to do on a daily basis, okay, and it's up to like 12 steps. Obviously, you can probably combine, but, you know, it might be worthwhile looking at and, you know, looking to see if maybe you might be missing some of these steps, but that would be my suggestion, okay? So the link is right there. If you want to just click on the link in the chat area, then you can bookmark that one and the one that Wendy provided, both those links. So let's talk about some resources, okay, that are available at Empire State College that you might or might not be aware of, okay? First of all, the one area that I think is underutilized is our library. And if you're really not quite sure how to use an online library, they offer workshops, okay, of how to search the library. And I should also make note, let me just show you the workshops first. So, for instance, on October 23rd, Introduction to Searching, okay? And so that might be something that you all might be interested in. It's from 6:30 to 8 o'clock at night. All you do is go to this website, go to the workshops, you register, and they will provide you the link. And then when you're ready, you just go to that room, and I believe they use Illuminate like I'm using today to do this particular workshop. They are typically interactive, so you will actually do search, okay, in the library. I think it's well worth, pretty much if you all haven't used the library, you're not quite sure, you're a little intimidated, I think it's well worth going to that workshop. The other thing too is that on November 1st they do advanced research tips and tricks. you know, that also uses the library, because sometimes, you know, if you need advanced information, you're not really quite sure if you what you should be using, okay, for your sources. And of course, they do cover better sources, better papers. You know, what is a good source? What is a bad source? Okay, they define that. So like Wikipedia, for instance, great to read and everything else and to get some good ideas, but not a source you should be using in your papers, by the way. Just let you know if you're not aware of that. Okay, so if you can't attend one of those workshops, let me see if they're on. We do have live chat. And actually, I don't know why that's not working right now. Fascinating. Must be down. Usually the librarian, it'll tell you who is available, and we do have librarians. Just like if you were to walk into a library and you go to the desk and you want to talk to a librarian, we do have live librarians. They're just virtual. And so they will tell you if they're online right at that point, and you're saying you're trying to search for this, but you know you're using these keywords and it's not working, can you help? They will be able to help you right there, okay, on the spot. If not, they do list their library hours that are available, so you can always send them an email. They are a wonderful group of people. I would say utilize them. They're a wealth of information. So that's one. And then, of course, you know, we have introductory writing and reading courses. If, in fact, you think you need to kind of brush up on some of those things, I would talk to your mentor. But there's a link that you can go and review. And, of course, like I mentioned, I don't cover all the study skills. So there is a link here on my PowerPoint that you can review when you receive the PowerPoint and see if there's anything else that you want to learn about. If you need a tutor, of course we have, I oversee the tutoring program. If you think that you're kind of struggling with the content and not understanding the concepts of some of the courses, it's really not a reading comprehension, you know, issue or anything else like that, we can provide a tutor if one is available. And Smart Thinking is another place where you can read some assistance. So, you know, look at that particular online tutoring service. That's available under the Learning Support tab, which I'm going to bring this up as well. You know, I'm doing an awful lot of talking today. You guys sure you don't have any questions? So I'm just going to push this out to the chat area. Oops, pushed down a couple times. But this is an area that has a lot of information. You know, it has a library link. It has the workshop links. For the workshops that I do, it has links to lots of resources. Here are some study skill areas: academic reading, research, critical thinking, you know, note-taking, time management. So, you know, again, a good place to go. I would say become very familiar with this particular place. Smart Thinking, if you're not aware of Smart Thinking, it's a free online tutoring service. You can submit your papers and receive some feedback, okay, and then that allows you to incorporate some of that feedback to make stronger, you know, compelling papers. Of course, the Writing Center, if you feel that you need a writing coach beyond what Smart Thinking can provide, that is something I also oversee. And then, of course, you know, I'm always available if you want to have a discussion. If you're not sure really what you might need, you know, you've tried, you know, X, Y, and Z, you know, you can always definitely contact me. So I'm just going to put, there's our office email. And this is how I can be reached directly. Or I can be reached at this following number. There, okay? So there's 3 places you can reach me. So that concludes my presentation. So I can stay here for a couple more minutes and answer, like I said, answer any questions, comments, inquiries. Otherwise, we can, you're welcome, Marianne. You're welcome, Xavier. Great, Heather, I'm glad that was helpful. So like I mentioned earlier, this session has been recorded, okay? The recorded link will be sent to me, and then you'll most likely, probably Thursday, Friday, receive the PowerPoint, the recorded link from Jessica, okay? And there's going to be a short little survey link in there too. So if you can also provide me some feedback of, maybe areas you like to see me cover that are not covered. If there was part of the presentation today you wish I had expanded upon more, or that you didn't like part of it and why, please. I'm always looking to improve upon these. You're welcome. Well, I'm glad everybody enjoyed today's presentation. I appreciate your time, of course. I know taking an hour out to do this, is a commitment. And I wish everybody good luck. And again, if you need any assistance, please do not hesitate to contact my office or myself. All right then, I'm going to stop the recording.